Hello, I'm John Henry Adams, and I'm a special collections librarian here at the University of Missouri. I'm here to talk to you for a little bit about some of the quirks you may encounter in printed books of the hand press era.
Printing in the West started in 1455 in the free city of Mainz, one of the most important cities in the Holy Roman Empire. Johannes Gutenberg, a patrician, goldsmith, and inventor, developed a method for printing with movable type. The technology spread quickly as printers moved around Europe. Italy quickly became one of the centers of printing. By the 1470s, Venice and Rome were producing more books than anywhere else in Europe. In the 1490s, Parisian printing took off, and in the first decade of the 1500s, Paris had basically reclaimed its position as the major book production center of Europe. Books printed in the 1400s are called incunables, from incunabulum, which is the Latin for the cradle. All early printing has a manuscript-like look. Remember, in the 1450s, the word for a bound manuscript was a book. It takes a few decades for this adherence to manuscript models to start to fade. Printing using a hand-operated press rather than a fully mechanical one are called hand press books. In practice, that means books produced between 1455 and 1800. There were still hand presses operating in the 19th, 20th, and 21st centuries, but they ceased to be the standard. Even though the printing press quickly established itself as the main means to distribute text, manuscripts didn't disappear. We still write a lot by hand, even today, when we have computers and the internet. Additionally, there was a market for manuscripts as luxury goods. Take this processional, which was produced in or around 1510, 55 years after Gutenberg. The printing press changed how books were made, and there are lots of little quirks to hand press era books. I'm going to talk about a few of them now. Hand press books, especially for the first few centuries, were made in at least two stages, and often in multiple workshops. You've got the printer, or printers in some cases, who produce the papers that go into the book. These then get sent to the bookbinder, who folds the pages properly to form a book and sews them together. The way in which a book had to be folded is called its format. Format can get very complicated very fast, but the basic rule of thumb is that when you fold a sheet of paper, you double the number of leaves and/or pages in it. A leaf is a piece of paper with a page on either side of it. If you fold a sheet of paper once, you get a folio, which has 2 leaves and 4 pages. The word folio literally means leaf, which is going to be important later. Fold your folio again, and you get a quarto, which has 4 leaves and 8 pages. The names of the next few formats are all Latin and refer to the number of leaves from each sheet. Quarto means 4. A third fold and we have an octavo, 8 leaves and 16 pages. The octavo was very popular because it could be pocket size. We could keep folding this sheet of paper over and over again to get smaller and smaller formats. After octavo, we usually just add the syllable mo to the end of the number of leaves. The smallest format I've ever seen is a 128 mo, which requires 7 folds and produces 256 tiny pages. If you wanted, you could also cut the paper between folds to get other weird formats, like the duodecimo or 12mo, but I won't get into that here. A gathering is the binder's term for a group of leaves that are all sewn together as a single unit. In Western binding, this happens through the centerfold. Usually, all the leaves in a gathering are made from the same sheet of paper, but sometimes, especially with folios, you'll find that a gathering is made up of multiple sheets. Essentially, the binder gets a kit to make a book, and to make sure that they sew the pages in the right order, each gathering is labeled with a signature mark that is typically a letter and then a number. So for an octavo like this one, we get A1, A2, A3, and then the next few leaves are unmarked until we get B1, B2, and so on. Signatures are done using the printer's alphabet, which is only 23 letters long. There is no letter J, V, or W in the printer's alphabet. If a printer reached the end of the printer's alphabet and still had more gatherings to do, they just started over, but this time with double letters, AA, BB, and so on. If they got through the alphabet a second time, then they would start marking leaves AAA, BBB, etc. We usually just say 2A, 3A, and so on. Not every leaf in a gathering will be signed. Printers often stop doing it at the halfway point, since if you get the first half of the pages in the right order, it's impossible to fold the paper so that the others are in the wrong order. We still call the leaves by their number in the sequence, leaf B7, for instance, even if it doesn't have B7 written on it. Title pages are a comparatively recent innovation. In the Middle Ages, you would just write "Here begins" and then add the title of your work. In 1463, the German printer Peter Schoeffer was the first to print a separate title page, though it took a few years before it caught on. Sometimes there is a full-page illustration at the start of the book that faces the title page. This is called the frontispiece. A frontispiece isn't the same as an illustrated title page. It usually won't include the work's title. Before the title page was invented, a lot of the publication information was at the back of the book rather than the front, typically on the last page. This is called the colophon, from the Greek for final touch. Often, you get a special printer's logo as well. The colophon is a tradition that started in manuscripts and continued into printed books. Before page numbers, there was foliation. These numbers count not the pages, but the leaves in the book. Remember that folio means leaf? That's where we get this term. Often, folio numbers are written in by hand rather than being printed, though we have them as early as 1470. Printed page numbers are not common before the 1500s. If you have to refer to a page and you don't have its page number, you should refer to it by its signature mark or its folio number and add whether it's recto or verso. Older books, in particular, have some special ways of spelling words and some unusual shapes to some letters. Many printed books will use the letters U and V interchangeably. You can see it being done here. Books of that era often do the same with the letters I and J, usually using an I rather than a J. If a word doesn't make sense and it has those letters, check whether it makes sense after you switch them. There are 3 different ways of writing the letter S. One for the capital letter S, one for the short s, and one for the long S. The long S looks a bit like the letter F, but without a complete crossbar. The general rule of thumb is that the long S appears at the beginning and in the middle of words, but never as the last letter of a word. Sometimes, special pieces of type were made to produce a pleasing shape for a letter, like a long S and a T that combine into a single shape, or a CT where the top of the T curls back over the C. These are called ligatures, and they're just meant to be fancy, so enjoy them when you find them.
And that concludes our video. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask.